In 1993, John Fogerty, the founder and lead singer of the Hall of Fame band Creedence Clearwater Revival, found himself at the center of a case being argued in front of the Supreme Court of the United States. The Supreme Court should have been arguing what is the best CCR song. Is it Bad Moon Rising? I personally think Fortunate Son is the best. Or maybe Proud Mary. But no, the Supreme Court was arguing over a bizarre case dealing with Fogerty and copyright law. However, that is not the most ridiculous part. What was ridiculous was that the origin of the case stemmed from John Fogerty being sued for ripping off John Fogerty. The beginnings of this strange story actually started decades prior in 1970. In 1970, CCR released Cosmo's Factory, their fifth studio album. 6 of the album's 11 tracks were released as singles in 1970, and all of them charted in the top 5 of the Billboard Hot 100. The album spent 9 consecutive weeks in the number 1 position on the Billboard 200 chart and was certified 4 times platinum, so you can say it was somewhat successful. But it was the 6th song on the album that started the controversy rolling. Run Through the Jungle was written by Fogerty. It was a solid song and was released as one of the singles from the album. When diehard fans think of CCR's swamp rock style, Run Through the Jungle is a song that personifies it, even if it is not as well known as some of their other hits. Run Through the Jungle came and went, and CCR continued trucking until John Fogerty broke up the band in 1972 to focus on a solo career. Fogerty released his first album, The Blue Ridge Rangers, with Fantasy Records, the same company he found success when he was with CCR. The album was nothing but covers and had no actual mention of Fogerty on the cover. Fogerty, believing Fantasy Records had failed to promote his first solo album properly, asked to be released from his contract. Fantasy Records owner Saul Zaentz refused. Eventually, Fogerty signed a deal with another company for the North American rights to his next album, but it cost Fogerty big time. Fogerty had to forfeit the rights to all of his songs he had written under his previous agreements, which were most of CCR's biggest hits. This obviously didn't sit well with Fogerty. They're his songs, and he'd be losing all the intellectual property rights and all the residuals that would come from them. It didn't take long for Fogerty to plot his revenge against Fantasy Records. After releasing a critically adored solo album in 1975, Fogerty wrote the album Hoodoo, which Asylum rated as subpar, prompting Fogerty to call off its release just 1 week before it was scheduled to drop. He lay low for the next decade until his album in 1985 named Centerfield, which eclipsed them all in terms of commercial sales and cultural saturation. Centerfield contains not 1 but 2 tracks that seem very much directed towards his former label boss, Mr. Greed, and the less ambiguous song, Zaentz Can't Dance, which includes the lyric, "Zaentz can't dance, but he'll steal your money. Watch out boy, he'll rob you blind." The song Zaentz Can't Dance, obviously referencing Saul Zaentz, ended up in a defamation lawsuit, with Fogerty being sued for over $144 million. That case settled, but it's not that song that led Fogerty to the Supreme Court. It ended up being Centerfield's opening track, "The Old Man Down the Road," that would ignite one of the strangest copyright lawsuits in music history. Remember, Fogerty gave up his rights to all of the CCR songs he wrote, which include the hit Run Through the Jungle. Fantasy Records believed that Fogerty's solo song, "The Old Man Down the Road," ripped off their now copyrighted work, Run Through the Jungle. So basically, they claimed that John Fogerty had ripped off John Fogerty, and they sued him for plagiarizing himself. Fogerty obviously disagreed, insisting that his solo song was a unique composition and that any similarities were there because they are literally both written by him. This case did not settle out of court like the defamation suit. It moved relentlessly through the judicial system, starting with a jury trial in San Francisco in 1988. The 2-week trial featured a bizarre moment that fit this case perfectly, with Fogerty taking the witness stand with a guitar in his hand to explain that yes, the 2 songs sound the same because they were written by the same person, performed by the same person, and in that person's signature swampy style that he helped make famous. This logic seemed pretty sound to the jury. It only took 2 hours of deliberation for the jury to determine that the 2 songs didn't meet the legal standard for copyright infringement. However, the legal action was just starting. Fogerty had to pay attorney's fees up to $1 million to win the case and show the fact that he didn't rip himself off. Had Fantasy Records won their lawsuit, Fogerty would have been required to pay their legal fees, and so he believed that the opposite should apply. Fogerty petitioned the court for reimbursement of his legal fees but was denied, with the court ruling that Fantasy's suit had neither been frivolous nor in bad faith, which is the burden required for the reimbursement of legal fees from only the defense's side when winning a copyright suit. This decision put Fogerty in a rough spot. Sure, he had won the case, but he was on the hook for $1.09 million in fees for his attorney and those of his current label, Warner Brothers. Fogerty decided to appeal the decision, and in 1993, the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit shot down Fogerty's argument, again on the same grounds, saying that the original suit must have been frivolous or brought in bad faith. The crux of Fogerty's appeal was that it was unfair for successful defendants to face a higher burden than successful plaintiffs for reimbursement of attorney's fees. Once again, Fogerty appealed the decision, but this was his last chance, and his last stop, which was all the way to the Supreme Court. Fogerty vs. Fantasy started with Fogerty's team making the same argument they had been. It made no sense to have a dual standard for plaintiffs and defendants seeking reimbursement for lawyers' fees under the Copyright Act. In March 1994, the Supreme Court issued a 9-0 decision in favor of Fogerty. Chief Justice William H. Rehnquist wrote the opinion, stating that there was nothing in the Copyright Act that implied that Congress wanted anything other than a level playing field when it came to awarding attorney's fees to the prevailing party. He also might have tipped his hand in being a fan of Fogerty and CCR, writing that the Creedence Clearwater Revival has been recognized as one of the greatest American rock and roll groups of all time. Fogerty changed a major portion of copyright law, and in my opinion, it was for the better. Fogerty also was able to get the rights back to all of his music. In 2004, Concord Records acquired the rights to all of the Creedence Clearwater Revival songs, and in 2023, Fogerty purchased the majority interest of those global rights to his song catalog. Fogerty continues to tour and write songs, and yes, you could guess, all the songs still sound exactly like John Fogerty.